Hey everybody, Tim Albrecht here, and welcome to this week's episode of the Ask a YFP CFP segment of the Your Financial Pharmacist Podcast, where we feature questions from you, the YFP community, to be answered by one of YFP Planning's fee-only certified financial planners. Before we jump into today's question, I want to give a shout out to YFP Planning's incredible team that makes this segment possible. YFP Planning offers fee-only comprehensive financial planning services that are customized to the pharmacy professional. So whether you want to optimize your investing plan, pay off student loans, or simply build a solid financial plan, YFP Planning will help get your income working for you rather than the other way around. You can learn more by visiting yfpplanning.com. Again, that's yfpplanning.com. Okay, this week's question comes from Megan in Columbus, Ohio.
Hi, this is Megan from Columbus, Ohio, and I was just wondering if we're in a position where we could potentially pay off the remainder of our loans. Let's say we have $30,000 or less in loans left, and we believe that we could pay that amount off in the next 2 years or at some point during the Biden administration. Do you recommend that we wait it out and see if anything is forgiven so that we can keep that money that's forgiven, or go ahead and just pay it off right away so we can start our life debt-free?
Tim Baker, what are your thoughts?
Normally, I would say that in this situation, never kind of rely or bank on the government to come through in terms of some type of forgiveness. However, the but here, and I think it's a big but, it seems like every other week there's a news story about the Biden administration pushing student loan forgiveness or some type of relief in some way. So, and again, I'm a little confused by the question, could pay off the remainder of student loans in the next 2 years during the Biden. So I don't know if that means we have the sum of money, let's say it's, $28,000 and we could write the check now, or we have to basically do it in installments. I think that makes that makes the approach a little bit different. I think if we talk about President Biden, he seemed reluctant while campaigning and during the first few years of his presidency to kind of, really follow through on some type of student loan forgiveness or relief. I think with the pandemic, inflation, kind of the midterm elections coming up, maybe that's why more recently there's been more of a push and news about this with, particularly, PSLF. I'm not sure he's going to unilaterally forgive 10,000 or 30,000 across the board, although I know that's been talked about. So, the long and the short of it is I'm not sure. I think if it were me, and this is just me, I probably would stand pat. I think to me, it would be trying to get some more information. Are the loans federal? Do you work for a nonprofit? How long have you been paying down the debt? Are these private loans that completely set different, ball of wax? If it were me and the loans are federal, I would probably wait at least through the end of the year, through the elections, and just see what comes about. If I'm sitting on that money right now and I could say, okay, I could pay off this debt and then maybe miss out on relief. I think that would be tough to swallow. I think, we were talking about this morning, Tim, where I bonds are in terms of maybe putting that into an account for a year and earn a little bit of interest there. Unfortunately, rates have gone up, I think, to kind of get in front of where, the Fed is eventually going to raise rates, but it really hasn't bore any fruit on the saving. If you have that money, it's not really helping a saver out in terms of increased, interest rates there. So it's a little bit, you're kind of stuck in between a rock and a hard place. I think normally I would say, Megan, just cut the check if you have it and move on with your life. I think just because of the pace of news and some of the things politically that are going on, I would probably just stand pat and just see what comes out. Because it could be that, he unilaterally by executive order, I think he has the power to say, hey, 10,000, 30,000 is, is coming off the books. For most pharmacists, that wouldn't mean anything, but for you, it'd be, the finish line. So then what could you do to deploy those dollars, elsewhere? But for some people, if I was talking to you and I could see the anxiety about having that debt and having it any second longer, and you had the money there, I would say just pay it off. So For me, like if I'm in that situation, Tim, I'm probably just biding my time, looking at, the news, we keep abreast of it, what's going on. And then just making a decision maybe, this year or end of this year and then go from there. It's like one of those legislative risks that are out there. Just who knows what's going to happen politically. There's so much kind of at stake, in terms of, the elections that might be something to kind of get people out to vote. But it's so difficult. But I think, 95% of the time I would be like, don't rely on the government. You got to figure it out, in terms of like some of these, relief packages that could potentially come your way from a student debt perspective.
Yeah, I'm with you on this one, Tim. I think that, all signs are pointing to more and more favorable terms for the borrowers federally. Now, does that mean, we're going to see kind of the blanket forgiveness, as you mentioned? I'm not going to try to predict it. We've already been wrong a few times on whether or not we'd have extensions, that continue on through now the end of August for federal loans. And as we always say, and you addressed it, a little bit on both parts, it's the math plus the feelings. It's the math plus the feelings, right? And, you mentioned if someone is, anxious and they're stressed out and, this is just a barrier they need to be done with and they've got the cash, certainly there could be an argument there from more the emotional side. But another layer I would add to this is, on the math side of it, we just need to think about in this time period of a forbearance where there's a freeze on payments and interest rates, what's the opportunity cost, right? And so, if those dollars could be used elsewhere in an opportunistic way, how do we factor that in as well? And I think for me, when I think about the opportunity cost, as well as, kind of waiting and seeing what's going to happen, at least through the next end of this next administrative forbearance period to see if we see even further extension, I would agree with kind of the wait and see approach. So not normally something I think either one of us would say, but we're now two plus years in since the beginning of that forbearance at the start of the pandemic, right? And I think we've thought a couple times now that may end, and here we are. And obviously, as you mentioned, we're coming up against the midterms. I do think this is a great time, and I've been saying this for the last year, and I mean it, today as much as I meant it a year ago. This is a great time to really feel confident about your student loan repayment strategy. And I think, Tim, one of the things that I have sensed as I've talked with more and more folks about this topic, there's not the same pain around student loans that there used to be. And I think that the dollars haven't changed, right? Debt loads have certainly for many even gone up. But I think because of this 2+ year period now of the freeze on interest rates and payments, we've kind of forgotten, and we're now getting ready to graduate the third class that's not going to have any payments coming out, at least. Obviously, that may change, after the forbearance period ends. And so I think that it's important we remember the magnitude of the student loan position. It's important we remember how important it is to optimize the strategy. We recently talked on, episode 248 with lead planner Robert Lopez about PSLF updates and optimization strategies there. And this window of time while we're waiting, it's eventually going to end, right? This forbearance. It's a great time to make sure we feel really confident about the student loan repayment strategy. And, we really advocate for that as a piece, as a part of the broader financial plan. But for folks that are saying, I really just need to focus on this one piece right now, we do have a service with our lead planners, Robert and Kelly, our student loan analysis survey that will really look A to Z one-on-one through the student loans to make sure we've got that best repayment plan and strategy for you individually. And folks can find more about that at yourfinancialpharmacist.com/SLA. So TBD, but seems like this is something that we're perhaps not even at the end of yet, right? As it relates to the forbearance, but we'll see. Megan, again, thank you so much for taking time to submit your question to be featured on the show. We're going to be sending you a super comfy YFP t-shirt. And for folks that are listening, we'd love to hear your question. We'd love to have a chance to address it here on the show. You can submit your question by shooting us an email, info@yourfinancialpharmacist.com, or you can send it and record it at yourfinancialpharmacist.com/ask-YFP. As we wrap up this week's episode, an important reminder that the content in this podcast is really meant to be for informational and educational purposes only, is not intended to provide and should not be relied on for investment or any other advice. For more information, you can visit yourfinancialpharmacist.com/disclaimer. Thanks so much for listening and have a great rest of your week.